Chapter 1. I've been crossdressing for as long as I can remember, and I can't pinpoint when it started. I was young, and as an only child, it began with my mother's clothes. Eventually, I grew bolder and started buying my own. After college, when I moved into my own apartment, I indulged in it more freely, sometimes frequently, sometimes not for weeks. As time passed, I grew apart from my parents, even though they lived just a few miles away. I would visit them during holidays, but that was about it. My parents had been quite young when I was born, both just 20. They had already started planning their retirement, purchasing a beautiful house by Lake Michigan, about 2 hours away. But then tragedy struck. My father died in an industrial accident at the age of 52. My mother, devastated, sold their house and moved to the beach. Thankfully, thanks to their savings, his investments, and the settlement, she would never have to worry about money again. My father's death shook me, making me aware of my own mortality, even at just 32. It led me to dive deeper into my crossdressing, to explore my feminine side more openly. I started going out, first on night drives, then to clubs, and eventually during the day. I went wherever I wanted as Beth, whether it was the movies, parks, or stores. I no longer had to rely on a boyfriend to buy me clothes, I bought them myself. At 5 feet 7 inches and 140 pounds, I could pass pretty well and never encountered any issues. During this time, I worked on developing Beth's persona. I found myself drawn to the professional, businesswoman style of the era: skirts, suits, pumps. I even pierced my ears, much to the dismay of my conservative German employer. But since I was their top salesperson, they learned to accept my quirks. My relationship with my mother was distant, occasional phone calls, Christmas and birthday cards, and the rare visit. Then, one summer in 1988, I realized I was about to turn 35, and it felt like time to be open with her, at least about Beth. So, I took a few days off and drove out to see her. When I told her about Beth and my hobby, she said she had known for years, but couldn't support me in it. I was crushed, though deep down, I had expected it. My mother was very conservative. I left that weekend with the realization that our strained relationship would likely grow even more distant. A couple of weeks later, I was home when the phone rang. It was my mother. She apologized for our distance and said she admired my courage for coming out, even though I should have done it earlier. We spoke for almost an hour, and before hanging up, she told me she loved me, something I hadn't heard from her in years. I was left wondering what had prompted this change, but I was glad to have some form of relationship with her again. Our phone conversations grew more frequent, becoming longer each time, mostly about family and pleasantries until one in early October. "Your 35th birthday is in just 2.5 weeks, Mom said. "I know," I replied. "You don't have to remind me that I'm middle-aged now." "That's not exactly what I meant," she said. "It's been a long time, and I just think it's time I get to know you better." "You're my mother. How much better can you get to know me? I know the man you were born as, but I don't know my daughter Beth at all." "What are you saying, Mom?" "I've been thinking about everything, and if this is a part of you, I should get to know that part too. So I'm inviting Beth to spend her birthday weekend with me. If she's willing, that is." "No lectures?" I asked. "No, just a genuine attempt to accept this part of you." "Is that okay?" "Well, my birthday falls on a Sunday, so how about I take a few extra days and come up Thursday night, stay until Monday? I have a lot of vacation time saved up." "That would be lovely," Mom said, clearly excited. "But I have one condition." "What's that?" I asked, curious. "I only want to see my daughter Beth." "Meaning what?" "From Thursday evening until Monday, it's Beth, and Beth alone." "Why?" I asked. "I've spent all these years trying to establish a relationship with my son, and now it's time I get the same chance with my daughter," Mom replied. "What's the matter? Never left the house?" "Of course I have, it's just that." I trailed off. Damn it, Mom snapped. You dropped this bomb on me a few months ago, asking for my love and acceptance, and now you won't even give me a chance to try to understand Beth. I froze. She called me Beth. Deep down, I knew she was right, but I was terrified. I wasn't sure whether it was the fear of rejection, ridicule, or simply allowing myself to be seen in this new light, but I was scared. Yet, I knew what I had to do. Are you sure? I asked, feeling my legs tremble. Yes, just a mom and daughter weekend, she said. If you're ready. Yes. Good. I'll see you Thursday, October 20th, Beth. We said our goodbyes, and I went to bed, though sleep wouldn't come. My mind raced. I had been out as Beth before, but never for an entire weekend. When I traveled, there was always some kind of safety net. I knew Mom would expect me to stay with her, and there would be no turning back. Deep down, I had hoped for this when I told her, but now that it was finally happening, I was as scared as a child on the first day of school. Chapter 2. The next 2 weeks were spent preparing to meet my mother as her daughter. I made sure everything I wanted to bring was clean and pressed. I even sent my favorite wig to be styled. I decided to get a pair of jeans and a pair of Lady Reeboks, both firsts for Beth. Luckily, I wore a women's size 9, so shoe shopping wasn't as difficult as it might be for others. I arranged to take that Friday and Monday off, as well as Thursday to prepare, and the Tuesday after to relax. The weekend before my trip, I went to the mall in my new jeans and Reeboks. I fit in so well that it almost startled me. While shopping, I decided I needed some slacks, so I bought a pair of black dress pants, women's style, and a pair of black flats to match. If I wanted Mom to see me as her 35-year-old daughter, I needed to dress the part. The final days before my departure were spent preparing everything I needed, selecting clothes, packing, and getting ready to put everything into my floral American Tourister luggage. After all, Beth needed her own luggage. I decided to stay conservative in my clothing choices as well as my chest. I had 2 sets of chest forms, one D cup and one B cup, but I knew for this visit, I would go with a 36B, despite my mother's and her family's fuller figures. That Wednesday night, I went to bed early, though I tossed and turned despite drinking an entire bottle of California Chardonnay. I wanted sleep, but it didn't seem possible. By 5:30 a.m. Thursday, I gave up and turned off the alarm I'd set for 9 a.m., then climbed out of bed. After showering and making sure my body was hairless, the electrolysis I'd begun a year ago was working. This time, I only had to shave a few stray hairs. I powdered my body, slipped into my pink terry cloth robe, and started my final preparations. I did my nails in a soft rose shade, then applied my makeup. Once I was done with my war paint, I began to dress. I planned to leave around 3 p.m., so I dressed as a businesswoman on the go, my favorite look. I wore a brown pinstriped skirt and a white silk blouse, leaving the matching jacket for later. Underneath, I wore a white Playtex cross-your-heart bra, a lace camisole, coffee-colored sheer energy pantyhose, and no panties to avoid any visible panty lines. I finished the look with brown suede pumps and started packing my luggage. The only real difference between me and a genetic woman was the chest forms in my plain bra cups, a waist cincher, and the padded panty girdle that gave me the rounded hips expected of a woman my age. As I packed, I checked off the items on my list that I had been preparing for the past week and a half. Makeup, curling iron, wig stand, spare pantyhose, the red and white outfit I had bought for Sunday at church, my jeans, Reeboks, ankle socks to go with them, bras, panties, shoes, and even a red purse for Sunday, everything was there. I double-checked everything before loading up my brown leather purse with all the essentials, a woman's must-haves, including Beth's credit cards, my driver's license, and keys. I packed my luggage into the trunk of the Thunderbird and headed back inside. It was barely 12:30. My stomach churned, not just from nerves, but from hunger, as the only thing I had consumed that day was probably too much coffee. Deciding to eat, I grabbed my matching suit jacket, purse, and trench coat, and went back into the garage. My hands trembled as I pressed the button to open the garage door. I started the car, reversed it out, and as I drove down the driveway, I closed the garage door behind me. I stopped at a local Big Boy for a salad and iced tea, then filled the gas tank. I couldn't help but notice the guys staring at my legs as I sat in the above-the-knee skirt. I loved it. Smiling and waving at them, I continued my journey on the expressway, taking my time and driving the speed limit. The sunshine streamed through the windows, and I enjoyed the breeze from the open moonroof. Occasionally, truckers passed me, admiring the view of my legs as my skirt rode up a bit. I relished every moment of it. Finally, I reached my exit and pulled off the expressway. I topped off the tank at a nearby gas station, used the restroom to relieve myself from the iced tea and Diet Coke, checked my makeup, and steeled myself. As I drove away, I lit up a Virginia Slim cigarette, hoping for the best. A few minutes later, I turned onto Mom's Street, tossed the cigarette out the window, and pulled into her driveway. My hands trembled as I opened the car door, and my knees shook when I stood up, trying to get out of the car as gracefully as possible. The 2 steps leading up to the porch seemed like a mountain as I climbed them. I paused for a moment, trying to steady myself, before ringing the doorbell. My stomach twisted when I heard movement inside and the doorknob turn. Chapter 3. I stood frozen as the door opened, and my mother appeared in the doorway. Neither of us said a word, silently taking each other in. She reached down and opened the screen door as I took a small step forward. "Come inside and let me have a look at you, Beth," she said. I stepped inside the house I'd been in countless times before, but this time it felt like I was walking into an entirely foreign place. I saw the familiar hall table with Mom's purse on it, so I placed mine beside it and moved into the living room. Mom closed the door and followed, stopping a few steps short as I turned around. My, she said, eyeing me from head to toe. She paused for a few seconds before meeting my eyes. I was a bit unsure about this, but I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised. "What did you expect, a hairy drag queen?" I asked in my soft, yet raspy feminine voice. Honestly, Beth, I wasn't sure what to expect. "I hope you understand." "I do, Mom. I hope I meet your expectations of a daughter." "Oh my God, yes," she smiled. "Now come here and give your mother a hug." We embraced, and she kissed me on the cheek. It wasn't a forced hug, but one filled with genuine affection, a hug a grown daughter would expect from her mother. After we pulled away, she took a step back, and I saw her more clearly. She looked as good as she had in years, dressed in a skirt and blouse with hose and heels. As always, Mom was impeccably dressed, classy yet conservative. I was just about to pour myself a drink. "Would you like one?" she asked. "Yes, please." "Scotch on the rocks, with a twist," I replied. "I thought you preferred whiskey," she said as she motioned for me to sit down. "Well, Beth prefers scotch," I said, sitting on the sofa and smoothing my skirt under me. "Whatever Beth prefers is what she gets," she smiled, clearly pleased as I crossed my legs like a lady. Mom poured us both a drink, handed me mine, and sat down in the chair. Over the next hour, we chatted, mostly about small things as we finished one drink and moved to another. Then, she seemed to gather her courage. "Do you still like Italian food, Beth?" "Of course," I smiled. "Why do you think I need the waist cincher?" "Well, there's an excellent Italian place not far from here." "Shall we go?" "My treat." "I'd love to, Mom," I said as I stood and started toward the foyer to grab my purse. "Just let me freshen up my makeup, and we can head out." "That sounds like a good idea for both of us." "Give me a minute, and I'll be ready too," she smiled as she got up and walked toward her bedroom. We both freshened up and left the house. Mom insisted on driving since she knew the area, so I parked my car in the garage and climbed into her Lincoln after she backed out. "Very ladylike," she said as I closed the door and buckled my seatbelt. "I'm very impressed, Beth. May I ask you a somewhat personal question?" "Oh, here it comes," I thought, but I replied, "Sure." "Where did you come up with the name Beth?" "It's a very proper name for the era, but why Beth?" Well, you could say it's a nickname, I said, lighting another cigarette. I go by Beth, but my full name is Elizabeth Joanne. I could see a tear well up in her eye as I told her my name. Elizabeth had been my grandmother's name, her mother, and Joanne was hers. I knew how close they had been. Very pretty name, she said, fighting back tears. I thought about names a lot when I started to go out and get deeper into this, I said, reaching into my purse for a tissue and handing it to her. I decided to name myself after the two women who most epitomized femininity, the two I love the most. That's so sweet. Your grandmother would have been proud, and I'm honored to have my name as part of yours, she said. When I was pregnant with you, your father and I debated names. You know the one we chose if you were a boy, but if you'd been a girl, we'd have debated between Donna Joanne and Donna Elizabeth, and Donna Elizabeth won. I never knew that, I said. I know, she replied. If I had been able to have more children, and had been blessed with a daughter, she would have been Donna Elizabeth. I guess I'll have to live with having one named Elizabeth Joanne. Thanks, Mom. May I ask you something? Sure, ask me anything, Mom. It's time you got to know your daughter. Well, this isn't one of those big questions, though I have a million of those, and I'm sure we'll get to them all. This is more of a favor. Go ahead, I smiled as we pulled into a parking lot. Well, your grandmother always went by Elizabeth. May I call you Elizabeth instead of Beth? Of course you can, I said, leaning over and kissing her on the cheek. But keep in mind, I've gone by Beth, so I may not respond immediately, but please, call me Elizabeth if it makes you happy. It does, Elizabeth. Thank you. When we got inside the restaurant, it was clear that Mom was a regular. Both the hostess and the waitress knew her by name. She made sure to introduce me as her daughter, Elizabeth, to both of them. Dinner was excellent. I had my favorite, veal marsala, and the wine was perfect. We ate, then returned home. By now, it was after 9, and I had to admit, I was tired from the drive and the poor sleep the night before. I suggested calling it a night. I brought my suitcases inside and went to the guest bedroom. After slipping into my nightgown, I crawled into bed, feeling content. Mom was trying, and I was so happy she was. Chapter 4. I woke up at my usual time, 6 a.m., and by 7 o'clock, I had already taken my shower, shaved, just the stubble on my legs, as there was none anywhere else, fixed my wig, and finished my makeup. I grabbed a pair of panties and a bra, put them on, then slipped my nightgown back on and added my robe and slippers. As I opened the door to my bedroom, I could smell the coffee brewing, so I headed to the kitchen, where I found Mom in her robe. Good morning, Elizabeth, she smiled. Did you sleep well? Very well, thank you, I replied, grabbing a cup for the nearly finished coffee. I was exhausted yesterday. I think all the stress caught up with me. I have to admit, I was a bit stressed about yesterday too, she said, taking the last drag of her cigarette and snuffing it out. I wasn't sure what to expect. I hope you understand. I completely understand, Mom, and I really appreciate how welcoming you've been, I said, bending down to give her a big hug. By now, the coffee was ready, so I poured us both a cup while Mom grabbed the Danish she had bought. She had even remembered my favorite cheese, which I thanked her for as we munched. We sat and chatted over our second cup of coffee and another cigarette before she spoke again. I have to tell you, Elizabeth, when you knocked on the door yesterday, I honestly didn't know what to expect, she said, taking a deep drag from her cigarette. But I was pleasantly surprised by what I saw. Thank you, Mom, I smiled. I can imagine what was running through your mind, but believe me, most of us girls aren't like what you see on TV. We all try to project a genuine feminine image. Some of us do better than others. Sure, there are the fetish girls, but most of us try. Well, Elizabeth, she said, I have to tell you, if I hadn't known, I would never have suspected you were anything but a woman. Not just the outfit, which I have to say I loved, especially with the brown pantyhose, but also the way you carried yourself, your walk, your voice, and even your gestures. Thank you for noticing, Mother, I smiled, giving her a hug. I really try hard, and I want to be the kind of lady that you and Grandma would be proud of. I got that suit at Hudson's this spring, on clearance, a $200 suit for $50. And for the record, those were pantyhose, not nylons, yesterday. That's what I meant, she said. Being an old lady, I just call them nylons. I doubt anyone wears real nylons anymore, only pantyhose. They're a lot more comfortable than stockings tugging at your garter, and God knows control tops sure beat wearing a girdle. Mom, you're not that old, I replied with a laugh. Besides, I'm old enough to remember the days before pantyhose. I've worn nylons, both with a garter belt and a girdle. And as for girdles, I wear one most of the time. It helps hide, well, you know, and the ones I wear are padded to give me more shape around the hips and backside. I guess that makes sense. I never really thought about it that way, she said. And I see you wear long nightgowns like I do. It varies for me, I said, snuffing out my cigarette. Sometimes I wear long ones, sometimes knee-length, and I even have a couple of baby dolls. I guess I'm undecided on what to wear. You sound just like a typical woman, Elizabeth, she smiled. I change it up depending on my mood and who's around. I even have a pair of baby dolls I wear for, let's just say, special occasions. Mother! I laughed. Hey, like you said, I'm not that old. Your father and I had a great intimate life, and a woman gets lonely. She quickly changed the subject, sensing my discomfort. So, what are we doing today? It's your birthday weekend. I hadn't really thought about it, I said. Why don't you show your daughter the town? That sounds fun, Mom smiled. We could shop, window shop, maybe have lunch at the cafe on the sidewalk. A mother-daughter day. Great idea, I said, feeling relieved. What are you going to wear? Why do you ask? Well, I see you as a role model for the kind of lady I want to be, so I thought I'd follow your lead. You're such a sweet daughter, Elizabeth, she said, kissing me on the cheek. I was thinking of nice slacks and maybe a blazer. Do you have any slacks? Yes, I bought my first pair for this trip. Excellent, let's see what you have, and I'll find something that goes with it. We cleared our coffee cups and headed to my room. I showed her my black dress slacks and flats, and she approved, picking out a white blouse and a red blazer to go with them. While she went to get knee-highs, I slipped out of my nightgown and put on my cincher and padded panty girdle. I was struggling with the cincher when she returned. That doesn't look very comfortable, she said, watching me wrestle with the hooks. You get used to it, I smiled, finishing up. Besides, what we women go through to look good isn't always comfortable. How true, Elizabeth, she smiled back. I brought you both an off-black and a suntan pair to see which you prefer. The suntan ones are fine, I replied. Okay, she said, placing the knee-highs on my bed. I'll leave both pairs in case you change your mind. Mom left the room, and I put on the padded girdle followed by my white camisole. After that, I slipped on the knee-highs and finished getting dressed. I had to admit, I looked pretty good in the slacks, filling them out well with the extra padding. I slid into the flats, grabbed my blazer, and went out to get another cup of coffee while waiting for Mom to finish getting ready. I was sitting in the living room flipping through her copy of Red Book when she emerged from her bedroom, dressed in a navy pantsuit, a light blue blouse, and navy flats. We both grabbed our purses, and off we went. Mom parked downtown, and we set off to explore. I quickly realized that while walking in flats was easier than heels, it took a bit more effort to get the caboose moving, so to speak. I had to concentrate harder to maintain the sway that heels naturally provided. After a couple of hours of window shopping and browsing through a few stores, with neither of us buying anything, we were ready for lunch. Mom led us to her favorite cafe, though she was disappointed the sidewalk seating was closed. We took a table inside. That's quite a motion in your ocean, Elizabeth, she said after the hostess seated us and left the table. Advertising? What do you mean by that? I asked. The way your behind wiggles so much, she smiled. I know you're in sales, but with that booty shaking, one has to wonder what you're selling. Mother! I gasped. It's nothing like that at all. I just wanted to make sure I was giving the right impression. I've never had flats before. Well, you did, my darling daughter, she smiled. Not only to me, but to those gentlemen over there too. I quickly glanced in the direction Mom was pointing and saw two businessmen, around my age, both of whom smiled at me. I quickly turned away and made eye contact with Mom, who could see I was flustered. She smiled and changed the subject. We talked about various things, including the shops we were planning to visit later. Lunch was lovely, and soon we were on our way. We browsed through a few more stores, and it wasn't until late afternoon that we came across a dress shop. After browsing for a while, Mom held up a beautiful burgundy paisley print skirt. This is lovely, Elizabeth. You would look great in this color, she said, holding it out in front of me. I guess so, I replied. But I don't have anything to go with it. Let's see if we can find something to fix that, she smiled, heading over to a rack of sweaters. By the way, what sizes should I be looking for? Usually a 12 in skirts and a large in tops. Mom quickly found a perfect burgundy sweater to match the skirt, and before I could protest about not having a slip-on and only wearing knee-highs, she gave me a stern look and whisked me off to the dressing room. The outfit fit perfectly, and when I came out to show her, I saw her delight. I went back in to change, but when I tried to pay for the outfit, Mom insisted on buying it for me as part of my birthday present. In the shop next door, we found a pair of matching burgundy pumps, and again, she insisted on buying those as well. We hit a couple more shops before heading home for dinner, which turned out to be cheese, crackers, fruit, and wine on the patio. I thanked Mom again for the outfit, and she reiterated that it was part of my birthday present. She did tell me, though, that she hoped I had something in black or beige because the white camisole showed through the sweater too clearly. I assured her I did. After finishing the bottle of wine, Mom went inside to grab another one. She was gone a bit longer than expected, but when she returned, she had both the wine and a shoebox. She poured me another glass and sat back down. You know, Elizabeth, she said as she lit a cigarette, the more I look at you, the more I see Blair in you. Thank you, I said, knowing how happy it made her, as Blair was her maiden name. I actually use Blair as my last name when I'm out, you know what I mean. You mean you're Elizabeth Joanne Blair? She asked. I nodded, and she continued. I suppose you know how proud that makes me. Of course I do, I smiled. It's kind of like choosing my own name, showing the world how proud I am to be connected to the two most beautiful women I know, you and Grandma. Your grandmother would have been so proud of you, Elizabeth. By now, Mom was crying, so I stood up and hugged her tightly. I had never felt this close to her before. It took a few minutes, but she eventually calmed down, so I sat back down and lit a cigarette, while she snuffed hers out. She wiped away the tears from her cheeks and then grabbed the shoebox she had brought earlier, one I had almost forgotten about. As I was saying before I got all emotional, she began, I had forgotten how much you remind me of the Blairs until I saw you sitting here. These are some pictures from this summer when I went to visit Aunt Susan in Chicago for her birthday. Grace was there, and I just can't get over how much you two look alike. There was always a family resemblance, but it's even stronger now. She started to sift through the photos and handed me one. This one's of me and Grace. I can't believe how much you two resemble each other, well, except for the Blair chest. I took the picture and looked at it. Yes, Grace and I could have been sisters. Her hair was shorter, a bit more blonde compared to my frosted wig, and, of course, she had the signature Blair chest. Big chests ran in the family. Was Emma there too? I asked, referring to Grace's older sister. Yes, but she takes after her father, Mom replied. You, on the other hand, are a Blair, just like Grace. There's definitely a family resemblance, I said. I do have a set of larger chest forms, D cups to be specific, but I thought the B cups worked fine for now. Well, a lot of women would love to be a B cup, Elizabeth. Wear them with pride, you're a Blair. Next time, I will, Mom. So, does that mean there will be a next time for us, mother and daughter? She asked. I spend most of my off-work life as Beth, Mom, I said. I'd love to get to know you better again and be the daughter you've always wanted. I didn't need her to say anything. The tears that streamed down her cheeks said it all. It was clear she wanted me to be her daughter just as much as I wanted to be. That realization brought tears to my own eyes. I leaned over and hugged her, and she hugged me back just as tightly. We stayed like that until we both finally regained our composure. Elizabeth, you do realize that being my daughter means more than just being it to me. It also means being a niece to Aunt Susan and a girl cousin to Grace and Emma. If that's what you want, Mom, I said, trying to steady myself. Do you think they'll accept me like this? I know Aunt Susan will. After all, she knows how much I always wanted a daughter, Mom said, pouring herself another glass of wine. I'm sure Grace will too. You two were always close, and as for Emma, I think she'll come around. But you never know with her. I haven't seen Emma in probably 10 years, and it's been about 5 since I saw Grace, I said, lighting another cigarette after putting out the old one. I never knew how she felt about things, but I think you're right about Grace. I always thought of her as more of a sister than a cousin. Well, give me some time to talk to everyone and get them ready for you, Elizabeth, Mom said. It will be a bit of a shock for them, I'm sure. Maybe we can do the introductions over Thanksgiving. I was kind of hoping you'd come back to Detroit and spend Thanksgiving with me, I said. Is that an invitation to stay with you, Elizabeth? Yes, it is, Mom, I smiled, placing my hand on hers. I have nothing to hide anymore, do I? No, you don't, my darling daughter, she smiled. But I do want you to be a true Blair. You mean the D cups? I asked, and she smiled. Okay, Mom, from now on, I'll be a real Blair girl and only a Blair girl. Good. Now I'll spend Thanksgiving with you, and we'll have everyone here for Christmas. So soon? I groaned. Yes, so soon. Can you come a few days early to help me get ready? Sure, I smiled. I have a ton of vacation time to use or I'll lose it, so I'll be there a few days ahead of the holiday. Maybe we can decorate the house like the old days? I think that's a lovely idea. A special celebration for my daughter's first Christmas. We spent the rest of the night reminiscing about past Christmases and Thanksgivings. Mom talked about how nice it would be to have a daughter around again. It was well past midnight, the second bottle of wine was nearly gone, and we were both feeling relaxed when we decided to call it a night. As I got ready for bed, I knew I had made the right choice in coming out to Mom, and I was looking forward to enjoying being her daughter.